Genghis Khan, he was the ruler of the Mongol Empire. Thutmose, he was the ruler of the Egyptian Empire. Darius, he was the ruler of the Persian Empire. Alexander, he was the ruler of the Macedonia Empire. Julius, he was the ruler of the Republic of Roman Empire. And from amongst the companions, there was a soldier, there was a commander, there was a conqueror. He crushed the superpowers of his time. He crushed the Persian Empire. He crushed the Romans. He conquered Iraq. He conquered Iran. He conquered Armenia. He conquered Jordan. He conquered Syria. The undefeated commander, the undefeated ruler, the sword from the swords of Allah Azza wa Jalla. This is Khalid ibn al-Walid radiyallahu anhu.
In history, there are names that shine like brilliant stars, forever etched in the legacy of battle and bravery. Among generals, some were known for their power, others for their cruelty, and some for their cunning politics. But only a few became legends, and one of them was a man who never knew defeat. Not by the Sassanids, not by the Romans, not by the Arab tribes, a man whose very name became synonymous with the sword. A man before whom even his enemies bowed in respect. He was the one whom the Prophet of Islam called the Sword of God. A man who stormed the battlefield like a tempest, and with the mind of a chess master, brought empires to their knees. This is the story of Khalid ibn al-Walid, a man who emerged from the darkness of enmity toward Islam into the light of faith, and then unsheathed his sword to rewrite history. Here begins a legend born in the sands and carved in eternity with blood, bearing the name of Khalid. Of the Hijaz, between the red sands and blue skies, a child was born into a tribe renowned for power, politics, and the sword. A child whose name would forever be tied to the strength of war and the art of command. Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid came from the tribe of Quraysh, but not just any clan. He belonged to Banu Makhzum, a family famed for its military brilliance and wealth, among the most influential in Mecca. His father, Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, was one of the wealthiest and most respected men in Quraysh, so much so that even Meccan nobles treated him with deference. Khalid grew up in this elite, militarized environment. But this nobility did not come with softness. From an early age, Khalid was raised among warriors and swords. Horseback riding, archery, hand-to-hand combat, and military tactics became a part of his daily life. He was both a passionate poet and a ruthless warrior. As a youth, Khalid was tall, athletic, and strikingly determined, quickly gaining fame across Mecca. No one could out-wrestle him. He was a marksman in archery. And on horseback, he made the desert sands dance. He was, in every way, a commander in the making, even before stepping into real battle. Along with his courage and skill, he possessed a unique pride. A pride born from noble lineage, military talent, and his father's power. A pride that would later serve him on the battlefield of Uhud, but would eventually break and transform into faith. With the rise of the Prophet Muhammad in Mecca, the Quraysh elite watched with growing anxiety. At the forefront of the opposition stood Banu Makhzum. Khalid's father, Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, was among Islam's earliest and fiercest enemies. Naturally, Khalid stood among the opposition. He was absent from the Battle of Badr, but after many of the Quraysh leaders were slain in that encounter, Khalid prepared for vengeance. At the Battle of Uhud, Khalid had not yet accepted Islam. As commander of the Quraysh cavalry, he entered the battlefield beside Abu Sufyan. Uhud became Khalid's first strategic masterpiece. He watched the battle unfold. Initially, the Muslims were victorious, but the archers, stationed on a hill to guard the rear, left their posts thinking the battle was over. Khalid saw the opening. He seized the opportunity. With his cavalry, he struck from behind. The battle turned. Chaos erupted among the Muslims. Many companions were wounded or martyred. Even rumors of the Prophet's death spread. In that battle, Khalid proved he wasn't just a sword wielder, he was a battlefield strategist. But fate had something else planned for him. Years passed, Islam grew stronger. One day, the Prophet sent 2 letters, one to Amr ibn al-As, the other to Khalid ibn al-Walid. In Khalid's letter, it read, "I am amazed at a man like you. How could someone of your intellect not yet understand Islam? Surely a wise man like you cannot be unaware of its truth. Would it not be more fitting for someone like you to use his intellect in service of Islam?" The letter struck Khalid deeply. His heart wrestled with the truth. He had seen Islam's rise. He felt the Prophet's sincerity. But pride had held him back until now. On the road to Medina, Khalid met Amr ibn al-As. Together, with hearts full of hesitation, but minds firm in decision, they approached the Prophet and embraced Islam. The Prophet said, "Praise be to God who guided you to Islam. Khalid, you are a sword among the swords of God, unleashed upon his enemies." From that moment on, he was known as Saif Allah al-Maslul, the drawn sword of God. Year 8 Aich, the Prophet sent a messenger to the land of Al-Sham to deliver a letter to the Roman governor in Busra. But the messenger was killed by one of the Ghassanid rulers, an act that, according to both Arab and Roman custom, was considered a declaration of war. The Prophet decided this could not go unanswered. An army of 3,000 men was prepared, and command was given in this order. Zayd ibn Haritha, if he was martyred, Jafar ibn Abi Talib. If he too was martyred, Abdullah ibn Rawaha. And if all 3 were martyred, the Muslims would choose a new leader. Among the army was Khalid ibn al-Walid, a new Muslim, but a veteran on the battlefield. No one knew yet that this man would shape the future of Islamic conquests. The battle begins. On the plains of Muta, the Muslim army faced a massive force of Romans and their Ghassanid allies. Some sources claim the Roman force numbered over 100,000. The disparity in numbers was staggering. The battle began. Zayd ibn Haritha carried the banner and fought bravely until he was martyred. Then Jafar ibn Abi Talib took the banner. He fought with one hand while holding the flag with the other. When one arm was cut off, he held the banner with the other until he too was martyred. Abdullah ibn Rawaha hesitated at first, but after reciting poetry about martyrdom, he overcame his fear, entered the battle, and was also martyred. Now the army had no commander, a moment that changed history. In that critical moment, all eyes turned to Khalid ibn al-Walid. Though newly converted, he showed no hesitation. He took the banner, assumed command, and reorganized the army. With defensive tactics, he analyzed enemy lines and saved the Muslim army from annihilation. In a brilliant move, Khalid changed the formation of the army during the night-swapping infantry and cavalry positions. The enemy thought fresh reinforcements had arrived. This psychological tactic shook Roman morale and forced a temporary retreat. The next morning, Khalid ordered a strategic withdrawal. With precision and calm, he led the army safely back to Medina through the midst of the massive Roman force. In this battle alone, not even Khalid's sword broke. When the Muslims returned, some said, "You fled!" But the Prophet stood and said, "No, they returned. They are the attackers of God." And then he called out to Khalid, "You are the drawn sword of God, Saifullah al-Maslul." The conquest of Mecca. Khalid entered Mecca with the 10,000-strong Muslim army. The Prophet had laid a brilliant plan. Mecca must be conquered without bloodshed. Khalid was assigned to one of the city's flanks. At the gate Khalid entered, he encountered resistance. A fierce clash broke out, but with lightning-fast tactics, Khalid pushed the enemy back. Several pagans were killed, but ultimately, Mecca was conquered. Without chaos, without broken doors, without innocent bloodshed. The Battle of Hunain. After Mecca, the tribes of Hawazin and Thaqif gathered a massive force to oppose the Muslims. In a narrow valley, they launched a deadly ambush. At the start, the Muslims were caught off guard. Some fled. Only a few remained, with the Prophet Khalid among them. He was wounded multiple times but never retreated. With sword in hand and blood on his body, he charged once more into the enemy's heart. Victory was achieved. Hunain was another trial, one Khalid sealed with his blood and unshakable faith. The Wars of Apostasy. Year 11, AH. The Prophet passed away. Before his burial, the Arabian Peninsula erupted in rebellion. Dozens of tribes that had accepted Islam now refused to pay zakat. Some even claimed prophethood. Arabia stood on the brink of returning to its pre-Islamic chaos. The first caliph, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, declared with firm resolve, "I will fight anyone who denies zakat, just as I fight those who deny prayer." And there was only one name capable of leading this war: Khalid ibn al-Walid. Tulayha ibn Khuwaylid in Najd claimed prophethood and rallied tribes like Banu Asad and Ghatafan. Khalid moved swiftly. In the Battle of Buzaha, he scattered the enemy lines, then surrounded their cavalry. Tulayha, at the peak of battle, pretended to be receiving revelation. But his wife whispered, "This is no time for revelation. It's time to flee." Tulayha ran. Khalid won. But it was only the beginning. Malik ibn Nuwayra, a commander of the Banu Tamim, refused to pay zakat. Khalid tried diplomacy, but inconsistencies in Malik's speech and tribal behavior led Khalid to declare him an apostate. That cold night, Malik and some of his men were executed. The event was controversial, and some companions protested, but Caliph Abu Bakr defended Khalid. "Khalid is the sword of God. I will not sheathe it." Then came Musaylima the liar, the most dangerous threat Islam had seen. With a massive army and the support of the powerful Banu Hanifa tribe, his forces were well-trained and brutal. In the Battle of Yamama, Khalid led the Muslim army. It was a bloody clash. Many memorizers of the Quran were martyred. Finally, Khalid lured the enemy into a garden known as Hadiqat al-Maut, the Garden of Death, and, after intense fighting, personally oversaw Musaylima's death. That garden became the mass grave of the enemies of Islam. In less than a year, Khalid commanded 11 different fronts, won 11 major battles, crushed over 100,000 rebels, saved the unity of Islam from collapse. From then on, he was not only the sword of God, but the savior of the caliphate. Now it was time to take Islam beyond Arabia, toward the Sasanian Empire and Byzantium. Year 12a. With Arabia secured, Caliph Abu Bakr sought to expand Islam beyond. The first target, the Sassanid Empire, one of the most powerful in history. Who better to lead than Khalid ibn al-Walid? He was appointed commander of the Iraqi front. Facing him, a disciplined army with advanced gear, war elephants, and centuries of battle experience. At Dat al-Salasil, Khalid faced the Persian army under Hormuz. Using light cavalry and rapid tactics, he engaged in a duel with Hormuz and killed him, then routed the Persian army. At Walaja, he faced a much larger force, Sassanids and Arab allies combined. Using a double flank maneuver, he trapped and annihilated them. Over 20,000 enemies were killed. Walaja became one of Khalid's most brilliant victories. At Ulais, Khalid swore vengeance for the Muslim martyrs previously slain in Iraq. This land is soaked in the blood of the innocent. Today, the river will flow with enemy blood. And so it did. The Euphrates ran red that day. At Hira, a center of culture and strong fortresses, Khalid used military diplomacy and psychological tactics to secure a conditional surrender. He proved that his strength was not only in the sword, but in strategy. When Khalid learned of a new Persian force approaching, he crossed the Euphrates at night, catching the enemy completely off guard, and crushed them before they could prepare. With these victories, Iraq collapsed, and the heart of the Sassanid Empire began to tremble.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
With Iraq subdued, Caliph Abu Bakr turned his gaze to Al-Sham and the Byzantine Empire. Year 13A, after conquering Iraq and winning battles like Walaja and Dat al-Salasil, Muslims turned towards Syria, a land under Byzantine control and one of the most strategic regions in history. Damascus, capital of Syria, was the first target. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius, facing crises, resolved to stop the Muslims here with full force. Khalid ibn al-Walid, now a legend, stood alongside generals like Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. They knew this would be more than just a battle, it would shape Islamic history. Damascus was well fortified with thick walls and towers. The Byzantines had thousands of elite troops prepared to defend it. Khalid, realizing a direct assault could end in disaster, chose a siege. Using surprise attacks and strategic raids on surrounding areas, Khalid weakened Roman control. One night, with Qaqa ibn Amr and a small group, he infiltrated Damascus. And opened the way for Muslim forces. This battle marked not only a victory, but a turning point in the war with Byzantium. The Byzantines retreated rapidly from central Syria. After Damascus, the Byzantines regrouped under Heraclius, who planned to crush the Muslims at Yarmouk, near the Syrian-Palestinian border. Over 100,000 Roman soldiers advanced, while Khalid commanded only 40,000 Muslims. But what they lacked in numbers, they made up for in faith and resolve. The Battle of Yarmouk became the greatest and most epic battle in early Islamic history. Khalid used cavalry to surround and isolate enemy units. He constantly shifted tactics to destabilize the Roman lines. When he spotted weaknesses, he ordered feigned retreats to lure the enemy into traps. He took advantage of the terrain, high ground, and narrow passes to limit Roman power. In a decisive move, Khalid launched a furious assault on the Roman command center, killing the Byzantine general himself. The Roman army collapsed in chaos, a victory etched in history. Yarmouk, fought in 13 to 14 AH, was the greatest victory of the early Muslim wars. Khalid ibn al-Walid was forever immortalized as a military genius, an unstoppable force of strategy and strength. This battle wasn't just a triumph of the sword, it was a new chapter in the history of the world. With the victory at Yarmouk, the road to the conquest of Egypt and then North Africa was open. Under Khalid's leadership, the Muslims were now ready to bring empires to their knees. And this is where the legend of Khalid ibn al-Walid rises from the pages of history and continues to live on in the present day. Centuries have passed, yet his name still echoes among the people, not just in books and speeches, but on cinema screens, television shows, and even in virtual battlefields. In 2006, a TV series was produced bearing a single powerful title, Khalid ibn al-Walid. The sound of drums, the cries of warriors, and the sword spinning through the Windall came together to recreate moments that changed history. The series portrayed his life from the days of ignorance to the battles in the Levant, highlighting all his strength and faith. In the famous TV series Omar, Khalid returns once again, not with noise, but with the commanding presence of a general whose name struck fear into the hearts of emperors. At the heart of the Battle of Yarmouk, when the Roman army was shattered by a storm named Khalid, history came to life on screen. Even in the world of gaming, where legendary heroes clash, Khalid's name is not forgotten. In historical mods of strategic games like Mount & Blade and Total War, players can command the Muslim army and, alongside Khalid, bring down the Romans and Sassanids once more. Some sit behind their monitors, wield virtual swords and shout, "We fight with Khalid!" And that's when you realize some heroes don't belong to just one era. They remain forever. In history, in the hearts of the people, and even in the games and films created by future generations. At the end of his military career, Khalid ibn al-Walid was remembered in the annals of warfare as the Sword of God. From his earliest battles to Yarmouk, he had never known defeat. On many battlefields, from Mu'tah and Hunain to Walaja and Yarmouk, Khalid never lost a fight. No front ever managed to defeat him. Khalid ibn al-Walid truly became a legend, a man who carved history with a sharp sword and an iron heart. And in the end, when Khalid was asked what he would say about his battles and his life, he said, "I've fought in so many battles and never suffered a defeat. In every part of my body, you'll find the mark of an arrow, a sword, a spear, or a dagger. Yet here I am, dying in my bed, against my will. So let not the eyes of cowards find rest." This historic quote reflects a man who always fought on the battlefield and never lost, yet in the end, surrendered to death in bed. Khalid ibn al-Walid passed away in Homs in the year 642 AD. Throughout his life, he was recognized as a peerless commander, and to this day, he is known in history as Saif Allah, the Sword of God. His death in bed stood in stark contrast to his epic life. Yet his legacy, his historic battles, and the military strategies he pioneered remains a timeless model in the history of warfare. In the end, the life of Khalid ibn al-Walid is a story of courage, resilience, faith, and victory. On every battlefield he entered, he emerged victorious, never tasting defeat. From the Battle of Mu'tah to Yarmouk and the wars against the Sassanids, he left behind an everlasting legacy. And perhaps the greatest lesson from Khalid's life is this: even the greatest generals must one day face death. But what endures is the legacy that never fades. Khalid ibn al-Walid triumphed in every battle, and in history, he will remain forever victorious.